College in Brighton, where today we are going to be making a confit of lamb with roasted garlic and a cassis jus. So our ingredients are, I've got a rump of lamb that's just been cut into two, some thyme, some shallots, garlic, some rock salt and some black peppercorns which are whole. That will be to marinate. To finish the dish, our ingredients that we'll need are some cultivated mushrooms. So I've got shiitake and some oyster mushrooms. Got some lemon juice, tomato, parsley, bit of potato for a garnish, and I've also prepared some red wine jus, which is just half veal, half lamb stock in there, just to complement the lamb dish, and also a little bit of cassis, just to flavour it right near the end. And there are our ingredients. Equipment for the dish: we need a tray just to marinate our lamb initially, a red chopping board when we prepare the raw lamb, a white chopping board for when we prepare all our other ingredients, obviously a chopping knife. I've got a colander and a bowl. The lamb is cooked in a two-stage process, and halfway through we just need to drain all the oil because we're confitting the lamb. Pan to cook the lamb in, a second pan just to finish the dish, and I've also got a selection of equipment. We're making a potato garnish, which I've got a rosti tin, a fish slice, a heavy bottom pan, and also a mandolin to cut my potatoes. That's all the equipment that we need. With my rump of lamb, to start with, I've dry marinated the lamb to get some extra flavours into there. So I sliced my shallots, just chopped up my garlic, added some peppercorns, added some thyme, and I've sprinkled with rock salt, and then I wrapped this dish and I left it for probably 3 to 4 days just to get some flavours into there. And the next stage then, we take it out of the fridge. Obviously it's been in the fridge for that time. We either brush off or wash off all of the dry marinade ingredients, so we've just infused flavour into there for a few days. We can get rid of those and we're just left with our lamb. What we then need to do is just roughly dice the lamb, so we're not being precise at all. The lamb is going to be completely cooked down and will break down, so we don't have to be too careful. Just looking at sort of a 3 centimetre cube, something like that. So we're just looking at large chunks. You can leave the skin side on, leave the veins of fat, all of that will cook out when we confit the lamb. I've got a thick bottomed heavy set pan, and we're just going to pop all of those ingredients, all of the lamb, into the pot. Here I have some goose fat and some oil mixed together. Now traditionally we would confit duck, and confitting is a term where duck is cooked in its own fat for a long period of time. So I've just got some duck fat for flavour and some oil, and we're just going to put that onto the stove, and we will cook this on a very low heat for around 3 to 4 hours until the lamb is really, really tender. It will just collapse as we take it from the oil. A little bit of pressure, the lamb will just collapse. So we'll come back to that and I'll show you when we've cooked it for 3 to 4 hours. But for now, that goes on the stove and we get on with the next job. So I've had my lamb on the stove for about 3 to 4 hours, and then we very, very carefully, because the oil is hot, we'll drain away the excess oil, just leaving our lamb. And let me show you what I mean by saying it will just fall apart under a little bit of pressure. If I just take a fork and just push it, you can see how it will very easily break down. Okay, that's the stage we're looking for. So the lamb is completely cooked. It's a two-stage process. We've confit the lamb first. We're now going to break it down, and then we'll finish the dish slightly later. It's a two-stage process. So all I'm going to do is quickly take my other pieces of lamb, and all we do, we run a knife through the lamb, just roughly, and it just breaks it down slightly for us and helps us with that process when we come to cook the lamb the final time when we finish the dish. So I just run a knife roughly through it. All the fat that was on the lamb has broken down during the cooking process, has gone into the cooking liquor, is no longer in the lamb, and even the little bit of sinew and tendons that were in there, they've all softened sufficiently. We don't need to pick through it, we We don't need to remove them. That's exactly how the lamb will end up, and that's absolutely fine. For this stage, that's it. When we present the dish, we're going to make we're going to use a small potato garnish, like similar to a galette potato, a very, very thin wafer, crisp-like garnish. And I'm just going to show you how to make that. I've got a standard baking potato, which has been peeled, a mandolin, a rosti or galette type tin, and a small cutter. And the first thing I'm going to do is just slice down some thin wafer-like pieces of potato, which you can see there, they're all quite thin. A couple more. Be very careful when using the mandolin that we keep our fingers away. The edge is a razor basically. If we cut like this, you will use that potato up very quickly, and before you know it, your fingers are going through. So we should always use the very top of our hand, keep our fingers up, and make sure that they're well away from that blade. Line up your potatoes, so we've got all of our slices, and just get them into small groups. Put those to one side for a second. Take our cutter, and what we're looking for is lots of round discs that we can use as the garnish. You can see all of those there. Cut some more. A few more. Obviously, the bits of potato we've got left, don't waste. We could use in a soup, or we could use for puree, that sort of thing. That'll be more than enough. I'll just get rid of those quickly. Take your tin, a little bit of oil, not too much. We don't want to drown it in oil because they will absorb a lot of oil and therefore they would become greasy. And then we start on the outside. We lay one down and we cover about half with the next disc, and we keep going around. If we have a piece of potato where it's not quite a perfect circle, it doesn't matter. Like this one here has a little crescent out of the side. As long as that's hidden, if you imagine the underside is the presentation side, and we've got the clean edge will be on show, this is hidden by the petal before, so we can use that no problem at all. We just keep going. So we work all the way around. When we get to near the beginning, what we need to do is just take a knife and lift up the first one and lay these last couple underneath and just spread them round so we've got an even spread of potatoes all the way around. Fill the gap in the middle with 3 or 4 more. We've got a little bit of oil in there. We can just drop a tiny little bit more on, and then we go to our stove. I have a heavy bottom pan here. Obviously the galette tin is quite thin. If we put it directly on the heat, it would start to catch very, very quickly. This gives us a bit of protection but also distributes the heat evenly, and we can pop that in and just start to cook it for a few minutes and it will start to colour. Some people choose, they may wish to finish it through the oven, or we can gently turn it over and carry on 3 or 4 minutes either side until we've got a golden brown colour. It's very important when we cut those discs of potato and we use the mandolin, get our slices, cut the discs out, that we don't put those discs into water. What we want is the starch in the potato to stay in the potato, not to be rinsed away. When we put the potatoes in water, it goes cloudy, it's the starch coming out. The starch sticks each of these discs of potato together so that when we finish cooking the garnish, it all holds together. If you wash your potatoes, it's going to be very, very difficult. So we'll come back in a few minutes and see how it's doing. Okay, so we've been away for a few minutes. One side has coloured a lovely golden brown. I've very carefully turned that potato garnish over, and we're just finishing off the other side, which will take a lot less time because the potato really is cooked through. So we just remove it from the pan, we'll take that potato garnish out and just pop it onto some kitchen paper to absorb the excess grease and moisture from there, and we'll just pop it to the side, ready for when we plate the dish later, and that's it, finished. We're now at a point where we are going to start finishing off the dish. So the ingredients I had before, the tomatoes, the parsley, the mushrooms and the shallots, etc. I've just sliced through an even mix of the shiitake mushrooms with the darker skin and with the oyster mushrooms, which are quite pale. Sliced those through, finely sliced, not diced, my shallots. Chopped my parsley. I've got the lamb that we chopped before. When it came out of the oil was still very, very soft and warm. That's just been chopped through. I've prepared some tomato concasse, so I've skinned and de-seeded and diced my tomatoes, and we're just going to add a squeeze of lemon juice at the stove. So that's where we've got our ingredients. We're going to go over to the stove. I've got a heavy set copper pan which is just starting to warm through. You can just see it's a tiny little bit of smoke there, plenty of haze. I've got some oil, so I'm going to pop my oil in. Take first of all some of my shallots and some of my mushrooms. Those two will take the longest to cook, because obviously our lamb is already cooked, so we're just going to start to bring those down. We want to cook them with a little bit of colour. We're not looking to sweat them, we're not looking to cook them with no colour whatsoever. We want to get some caramelisation in there, we want to get some flavour in there. We'll just leave that there for a second. I'll just go and get my seasoning. I've got some pepper. I've got some of my rock salt that I had before for my marinade. And give it a quick stir. I'm now going to add my lamb, and I'm also just going to reduce the heat slightly. Now we chop the lamb through, which helps break it down. This process now, where we're cooking it back through again, obviously we want to make sure it's thoroughly heated through, but it's also assisting that lamb breaking down. So what we'll end up with is a very fine mix, shreds of lamb, shallots, mushrooms and such like. So that'll just take a moment or two, and I'm just pushing down on the lamb with my fork, with my spoon, and you can see, if we look here, it's just breaking down into the original fibres of the flesh of that lamb, so it will break right down. Now we're going to add some of our tomato concasse. So we've just got our diced tomato in there, and we're also going to have a good sprinkle of our fresh chopped parsley. That will take very little time to warm through. Last job, we'll have a quick squeeze of lemon juice, which obviously will steam in the pan, but we're getting lots and lots and lots of flavour in there. Be careful if, as I just have, I've got some lemon pips in there, so we'll just quickly whip those out. That lemon juice obviously has added flavour and a little bit of moisture as well to the dish. And we're just going to remove that from the stove, ready to start plating up. So for now, that's it. So I'm back at the stove. I've got a pan which I've pre-warmed, and we're just going to finish the sauce, which is the final component of the dish, and then we can assemble the entire dish and present it. So I've got my red wine jus that was made previously. We always have on stock in the kitchen when we finish off our sauces. It's made with half veal stock and half lamb stock, so we've got some flavour to complement the dish. And I also have a shot of creme de cassis, so blackcurrant liqueur. I'm going to pop that into the pan. We'll just quickly boil off the alcohol and reduce it down until it's almost disappeared, but not quite. So we're not thinning our sauce, but we're getting lots and lots of flavour into there. That'll just take a moment to reduce down. The bigger the bubbles get, the more it's reduced. It's starting almost like sugar to thicken, so we don't want to go too far. If I just take that away from the stove now, you can see it's almost gone sticky. If we took all the bubbles away, there's very little liquor left. Any further than that, it would start to burn. So now I'm adding in my sauce. Give it a shake around, and obviously you can see the cassis has darkened the sauce. If we look at our original jus, and we now compare, we've got this lovely rich colour and glaze. So we'll just bring that to the boil. And that will do. So now we've got all the component parts of our dish. We have our lamb mix that we heated back through with tomatoes, shallots, mushrooms and lemon juice and some chopped parsley. We have our sauce. We have our potato garnish, which we finished off. And I've also roasted and peeled some shallots and some garlic. So we have 3 bulbs of shallot, 3 small cloves of garlic which have been roasted in oil and peeled. And then all we're going to do is we start to assemble the dish. So I'm using the garnish items that I've prepared, get them all evenly placed, all facing around the same way. We take our lamb mix, which like I say is just moist. It's not a wet mix, it's not completely dry. The moisture's come from the tomatoes, the moisture's come from the lemon juice that we added. And what we're doing, we're packing that and all those flavours into a metal tian ring, trying to avoid what I've done, which is to spill it over the sides, so our plate stays nice and clean. Get another one in there, maybe another 2, and I'm packing that down so when I remove the ring, if we've got it right, it will all stay there. There's just enough for the pressure to hold it all together. So I'm just pressing that right down. That lamb is moist, and you can see it's all just starting to pack together. Gently remove that ring. I've got the potato garnish that we made, one on top, one on bottom. Just going to take my sauce and just transfer it into a china jug, or you could use a metal jug as long as it's been pre-warmed, just for accuracy. And then I can just pop that round the outside. And we'll just have, just for colour, a tiny little bit of parsley on the top. There you have it, confit of lamb with roasted garlic and a cassis jus. Thank you very much.